First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner.
He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom.
This is Eternal MMA.
All right, everyone, welcome back and thank you for joining us here once again on another edition of the Eternal Insiders Podcast, powered by Fight HQ, the official uniform partner for Eternal MMA. As you can see, I'm once again being joined by the man in the commentary booth, Matt Bones Williams. We are here today to talk about the absolute stellar weekend that was for Eternal 90 and Eternal 91. What a way to cap off an absolutely extraordinary year for Eternal MMA with back-to-back cards on Friday night and the Saturday night. We're here to talk about it all. Here to talk about the key moments, the key fights, the winners, the losers, absolutely everything that tied into that epic weekend to finish off the year. So without further ado, my man, my partner right here, Matt Bones Williams, back here to talk about everything. Pleasure to have you here, man. Saw you for the first time up at the cards on the Gold Coast on the weekend. I know I had an absolute blast, brother. Just can't talk enough about how fantastic that was. You were commentating, but I know you had a blast too with everything that went into that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was so nice to meet you under the most unusual circumstances, though, I have to say, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. Yeah. But me and Luke's first meeting saw us within 2 minutes facing off against each other across a desk in a Hot Wings challenge. And like me being kind of a white line fever kind of guy, a little bit, I may have just got a little bit carried away with the whole thing. And been a little bit aggressive. But post that, so nice to hang out with you, bro. Love what you're doing. The weekend was incredible, man. The double header weekend really lived up to the hype for me. It was a lot. Like it seemed like it just seemed like a bit of a dream. It just went forever. And then coming back to Melbourne, I've had a pretty difficult couple of days back here, but I'm keen to talk about the show, relive some of those moments, and come back like Larcinese from the dead and snatch it back at the last moment.
I like that, man. Oh, what an analogy that is. Yes, let's get to that, and we're going to talk about that fight. Oh my God, like just so much to talk about. And yeah, the first time we did meet was straight into a Hot Wings challenge. Like that was crazy. I'm not a Hot Spice guy or anything by any stretch, so. Looking forward to seeing the results of that when that eventually comes out on the videotape there somewhere. But I think my stomach has finally recovered from that. I was a little bit suspect there for a little bit further in the day. Like, not too bad, but there was something kind of telling me that I'd eaten some spicy chicken wings. But I don't think we did too bad, man. I think we gave a good account of ourselves in that one, and then still went to put on a show. I mean, I didn't put on a show. You had to go and commentate later on and still absolutely nailed it, man. So, for my part, I just want to give a special shout out to Cam O'Neill and to Ben Vickers for getting me up for this weekend. Obviously, I've already spoken to Cam, just on Facebook and give my personal thanks. But I just want to put it out there that this is an incredible weekend for me. Obviously, I do the podcast and everything. I talk to so many cool people. But to be able to get up for this weekend for the fights was just an absolutely incredible way to cap off this year. I'll always be eternally grateful, pardon the pun there for eternal, but always be grateful for those guys and everything they've given me in terms of opportunity. Be able to sit there cage side and meet so many great people, watch so many great fights back to back on the Friday and Saturday night. It means a lot. So from the bottom of my heart, Cam and Ben, thank you so much. What a great couple of guys. Always be appreciated. And with that, we're going to talk about those fights. We're going to talk about Eternal 90 and Eternal 91, but for this video, we're going to specifically talk about Eternal 90. And we're going to do it all again in a separate video for Eternal 91 because there's so much to talk about. Main card specifically starting with, but, I mean, what a way to kick off the main card, brother. I mean, we didn't get sort of much time to even sort of soak it in because this was over in the first minute of the fight. Yusuke Sato versus Liam Brewster in the lightweight division. I mean, they made our job fairly easy to break down this one, especially Yusuke, because this was over in the first round. A massive KO for Yusuke Sato, my apologies, out of CMBT from Japan. Had you calling for whoever the mystery Muay Thai coach was out of CMBT with that lovely showing of the kicks and then just the Thai clinch to put him out with the knee at the end there. This is an easy one to break down, man, but I mean, what a potential star we've got in our hands with Yusuke Sato, just 25 years old, making his pro debut. putting the absolute lights out on Liam Brewster to start off a main card. What a way to kick off proceedings that was, brother.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you that what we have on our hands is absolute star material in Yusuke Sato. He's got it all too. It's not just in the cage. He's quite charismatic outside of it. I remember when he came down here to Torquay to fight on my little show, he was wearing like a silver vinyl tracksuit or something. I'm like, he looked like he was an MMA fighter from outer space. And he fights like he's from a different planet too. I saw that. Yeah, I did post something up tongue in cheek about whoever teaches the Muay Thai, these guys, the Muay Thai down at CMBT needs to reveal themselves, full well knowing that is well and truly a Brenton Mumford type maneuver. Incredibly impressive array of kicks. He's got such great diversity and dexterity, but he doesn't sacrifice power in being creative with his kicking game, which we often can see. Like thinking about a guy like rest in peace, Elias Theodoro. Like he used to have a really creative kicking game, but he never hurt anyone in the UFC. He just used to cruise to victory. Well, Yusuke Sato is quite a different story, and the knee, the way he off balanced, so he offset the axis of Liam Brewster, took his balance to pull his head forward to land that knee. That was quite something. And look, I also want to say something about Liam Brewster. It was hard for me to see Liam Brewster go out like that. It was a really tough road for him to even get back into the fight, into fighting. He lost 16 kgs to be there. And life is so much more than just a fight, isn't it, Luke? It's
100%.
Sometimes the fight is actually getting to the cage. Something that 99.99% of people on this earth could never muster the strength to do, let alone walk through adversity. So full respect to Liam Brewster. It was hard to see him go out like that, but I feel like the victory was already hard won for Liam coming into Eternal 90.
No, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I mean, it just sort of it highlights a point about mixed martial arts, and I've said this on the podcast before, that there's no sport like this. The highs and the lows are so extremely different compared to any other sport. It's not like basketball, it's not like baseball, it's not like football where, you have an off night, you regroup, everyone forgets about it, you just come back next week, maybe you have a stretch of 5 bad games, you just turn it all around. This is one moment, and maybe you only get X amount of moments in your fight career, you know what I mean? Like in the training and the build up, you know this obviously a lot better than me, but everything that gets poured in, the sacrifices, you're talking about, the weight journey, like making it down to there, or to get into a cage for it to potentially be over for you inside 30 seconds, and then to get the next opportunities maybe 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the track, again, just to potentially, hopefully, sort of get the next win. So the stakes are always high. The glory for the winners is always massive, but you got to feel for those guys that put in all that effort, and unfortunately come away with the win. And no doubt, Liam will take in his stride and bounce back and everything. Hats off to him. Obviously, it was a brutal knockout. He seemed like he was at least in good spirits immediately after the fight. Once he sort of got his bearings back. But again, can't take anything away from Yusuke Sato, because like you said, we've got a bit of a star in our hands with this boy. For a guy that was just grown up in Japan, but he's only been in Australia for 2 years, living on the Gold Coast. Phenomenal English, by the way, for a guy that has been living in Japan all his life and then is coming over here. You got to talk to him in the cage after the fight. So fighting in the lightweight division, I don't know. I can't wait to see him back, man. We've definitely got something special on our hands there for sure.
Yeah, so I didn't get to talk to him in the cage after his fight because I was on the interviews.
Oh, was that? Oh, no, my apologies. You were obviously the following
after.
night. Yes.
But I did talk to him in the cage where he acted. He's got great English, but he was probably the world's worst translator because he just took the mickey out of everything. And I'm sure we'll get to that when I was interviewing Taki Taniguchi from CMBT, and he just kept saying that this man needed a beer. But yeah, absolute star power. Look,
wanted to back it up in 91 too. He was saying he was ready to go for Eternal 91. He was fresh.
Now, that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure how much I can say, but he made the call, and I can tell you that he was very, very close to fighting the next day. There was a gentleman there in the audience by the name of Campbell Symes, who came all the way from Thailand to fight Kobe Porter.
Yes.
At catch weight of, I think it ended up being like 72 or 73. Campbell Symes, a very, very high-level black belt from Thailand, the jiu-jitsu coach at Southside Thailand. He's known for his like back-taking system. He's got the world record for the longest roll in jiu-jitsu history, 30 hours non-stop.
Isn't
so
that
much
wild?
so that he was hallucinating.
Yeah.
It's insane. Now, Kobe had a car accident leading up to the fight. There was the Southside team were pretty disgruntled with the circumstances under which they came to Thailand and then had no opponent. Campbell Symes continued to make weight right throughout the week, made weight on the Thursday, which is just insane, with no opponent, and it almost turned up trumps for him. So that I can tell you till quite late up in the evening that was being discussed. But I think once all the adrenaline died down, cooler heads prevailed. Unfortunately, we didn't get that storyline, but it's probably makes sense that Yusuke Sato takes some time to prepare for a guy like Campbell Symes. But maybe we'll see that in the future, heading into Sydney and then Perth and then back to the Goldie Loop.
That's a fantastic bit of insider information there. And I mean, if that's something that does materialize for those two guys next year, that's something that definitely has to be talked about in the lead up. Because I mean, for a guy calling to fight the next night on Eternal 91, and that be potentially a possibility, just sort of goes to show that this isn't just for shows of a fluff. Like, these guys are ready to kind of back it up. And I mean, hats off to Campbell Symes for coming in as well and making the weight, hoping to get an opponent potentially. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work out, but that just shows you the dedication of these boys, like coming in ready to put on a scrap. So yeah, let's keep our ear to the ground and see what comes of that one, man, because that'd be something cool to put together, especially off the back of that information. We got some heavyweights too, finally back in the cage. For Eternal MMA, a lot obviously got made of the fact that we don't get a lot of heavyweight fights in this country, let alone specifically for Eternal MMA. But we got Ush Jackson versus Ken Viliamu in this one. A couple of big boys. A couple of boys, while they're big men, supremely light on their feet. I was very impressed by how well these boys moved. Ken Viliamu coming out with the knockout win towards the end of the third round after an incredibly good fight. Like, I watched it back again, and I loved it. Like, from watching it cage side and then watching it back again, like, just like both of these boys, with their technique, with their speed, with their power, the fact that they were breathing heavy for most of the fight, but still managed to continually to put it on through round one, round two, round three. I think we're going to have to rename the move to the Viliamu roll from the Imanari roll, because I think Ken Viliamu threw up an Imanari roll there in round one towards the end there. It had it all. It's like spinning back elbows and everything, man. This wasn't just a classic big boy kind of slobber knocker through a round and a half and then just breathing heavy while they kind of threw looping shots. It was incredible technique all through the fight, power, speed, elbows, Imanari rolls. It had it all. Hats off to Ken Viliamu, moves to 3-0 after this big-time win. This was a lot of fun, man. What did you see?
Yeah, I love the Viliamu roll. That's awesome. I heralded this fight as Kung Fu Panda for adults.
Yeah.
Because not just because they're not big cuddly teddy bears, these are two bad dudes, but because in their previous fights, the agility that they've shown as big guys. And I don't enjoy watching heavyweights fight as much as I watching the lighter weight classes fight. That's just because consistently in heavyweight divisions, we've seen a lot of boring fights if it goes past the first round. Now, I was completely proven wrong. Yes. I think heavyweight MMA, especially in this country, has come a long, long way. And what we're looking at was two incredibly well-conditioned, well-prepared, high-level heavyweights, especially for the amount of experience they had. Those guys are UFC caliber heavyweights. And with some like a regular competition schedule, I think both guys have an incredibly big and bright future, especially now with Viliamu showing on his record that he can knock people out in the third round.
Yeah.
If you look at the metrics for heavyweight fights, I think about 90% of the knockouts come in the first, and then beyond that, they happen early in the second. Otherwise, they don't happen at all. So to show that is a real notch in his belt, I think. for me, the story of the fight was the game plan of Viliamu. He invested to the body right from the start. When he was in Southpaw, he was showing a strong kicking game.
Yes.
He was kicking the liver, he was kicking the wrist and the forearm of Ush Jackson, which is a good strategy. I think I spoke about it on the air. It's a good way to take the power out of somebody's right hand. If you continue to kick that wrist, the arm starts to go dead, especially when you're 120 kgs after a weight cut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I just want to say on that
insane.
too, because I think a lot of people that watch think like, if you're not necessarily involved in martial arts, or you've never been kicked or anything like that, that people think that if your arm's there, you've blocked that, you haven't taken to the body, she's all good. But that's not the case, because like that's your power getting taken away, as you just said. Like that shit still hurts. So it's not necessarily a blocked kick or anything like that. Like that is damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's breaking your posture, it's also a big scoring moment. But as Viliamu continued to work to the body, both with his left hand. When he was in orthodox, he would dig to the body and come over the top with the right.
Yeah.
That investment, he was able to make that withdrawal late in the third to get the finish. So a really good showing for both guys. Ush Jackson, his work on the inside was beautiful, like with his short work, his knees and his elbows. I love seeing that. He was very patient up against the cage. I think if Ush Jackson fought any other gentleman other than Viliamu that night in Australia, he got his hand raised. They're both top tier guys. And really looking forward to seeing more heavyweights involved in Eternal MMA, although I'm pretty sure most of them have turned their phones off after seeing those gentlemen punch on.
I wouldn't be
and knowing that
surprised.
they're coming into 2025.
Well, I mean, and this is the thing though, like when we've seen with heavyweights in the past, coming out of Australia, if you're talking about these guys being UFC caliber boys, like you don't necessarily need like a long record to be able to get yourself as a heavyweight into the UFC. Like I think back to like a guy like Bam Bam, I think was only 3-0 or 4-0 himself when he went straight over to the UFC, like because the divisions over there, like even in the UFC aren't like, the cup does not runneth over with, prospects and top tier heavyweights. So it might only sort of take one more for a guy like Ken Viliamu. If anything, he might have already sort of shown enough. But I think watching the fight back, I think it was Ben Vickers said that the story of the fight was definitely Ush Jackson's hands and Ken Viliamu's kicking game. But I think the way that Ken Viliamu just blended together just more aspects of mixed martial arts, like being able to sort of grapple against the cage or throw something crazy like a spinning elbow. Obviously, the Imanari roll didn't come off for him, but I think he was just showing that more diverse kind of skill set and being able to put it together at the absolute right moments, was certainly what paid off for him. But a big-time finish, man, and the way to end that fight as well, that was a brutal knockout too. Like, it was in the last 20 seconds of the fight, I think it was. Like, to be able to cap off that display and then finish it with a highlight reel KO, like we said, showing that you can end in the third round, that was a brutal finish.
Yeah, 100%. It was a great way to close out that and make a real statement. Look, I think I tend to agree. He's probably getting pretty close to being on the cusp of a call up. Maybe one or two more good solid wins. A guy like we had the heavyweight tournament in Auckland for Eternal with the heavyweights. Unfortunately, on that occasion, I'm pretty sure every fight went the distance. Didn't quite live up to the hype, but a guy called Ricky Beecham got the win on that occasion. He's been pretty active around the scene. He's doing some stuff with some other promotions, but there is some heavyweights around, and a couple good wins would put Viliamu in really good stead. I'm expecting Ush Jackson to get back in the cage and build on from this. He looked great, and big things for both gentlemen. Look.
Indeed, big things for both gentlemen. And again, special shout out to Viliamu. He's a guy that originally was a footy player. I decided to give up footy to pursue mixed martial arts. For us, thank you, Ken, for deciding to venture down that path, because I'm not a footy guy, or in terms of at least the rugby side of things there. So I'm glad you've crossed over to mixed martial arts, and hopefully we get to see much more of you in the future. Great to see the heavyweights back in the cage for Eternal MMA. We moved on from that one to a couple of young prospects in the featherweight division. We had Ethan Mitchell versus Alistair Volders in a fight that was incredibly hyped up, especially for sort of the profile of these guys with, still like a small record so far, especially like Ethan Mitchell coming off A close loss to my apologies, to Taser Malone. And Alistair Volders coming in 3-0 in his own right with 3 finishes out of his first 3 fights. This was very high-level stuff. It was kind of, for my part, sort of the tale of two, I guess, very different sort of fighting styles, in the sense that Alistair Volders, for me, was just more the technically responsible fighter from both an offensive and defensive point of view. Ethan Mitchell, such a flashy striker. I think Ben Vickers did say on the commentary that, for Ethan Mitchell, who didn't come away with the win with this one, obviously, could probably take some time to invest back in the gym and just being a bit more economical with his striking, because it was Alistair that was the more economic with his mixed martial arts in general, not just the striking, but picking the right moments to grapple, keeping his defense nice and high, being able to work off the jab, and just sort of being able to outwork him through 3 rounds. It was a close fight because we got a split decision in the end. Watching it back, and I felt at the time that Alistair did win the last 2 rounds, but got to give hats off to Ethan Mitchell because he's had 2 incredibly tough fights to start his pro career. We'll talk about this a bit after the card, but obviously we had Taser Malone just got announced that he's fighting for the featherweight championship, and then coming up against another menacing prospect like Alistair Volders. So for Ethan Mitchell to start his career 0-2, I mean, when you're coming in against 2 boys like that to start your career, that's an incredibly tough challenge, and no doubt he'll be back. But Alistair Volders ultimately comes away with the win, split decision win. What did you see in this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what you were just talking about there with Mitchell, because there's kind of 2 aspects to this. First of all, I'm a massive believer in strength of schedule. You hear me talk about that a lot. I think in the modern contemporary MMA ecosystem, if you want to be noticed down the track by the UFC, and then when you arrive there, you want to have success, you need to have had hard, tough fights versus strong guys. Gone are the days where you can pick and choose them, and too many people do, where there's a clear A and a B side. Like this has happened a lot through the past. People get to the UFC 6-0, 8-1, and they get there, but they haven't fought anyone apart from a tuk-tuk driver and a guy that they found in the kitchen out the back at the Southport Sharks. One year, it's never happened at Southport, and they get in there and they flog their way to an incredible record, but then they get there and they're no chop. So I like that from Mitchell. I like that from the Team Compton's team. They're taking the hardest, toughest fights. I'd say that that's part of Mitchell's personality. He seeks that out. He is a true martial artist, like to the core. When you get to know him, you understand that. My Thai trainer is literally crawling on the floor past me. What an unusual character.
For a start, I was like, oh, is that your dog? And then I'm like, that looks like a person. I'm like, no, that's a dog. Like, wow, okay. Mate, all right. I only saw the black. This is a madhouse at the moment. My goodness. I love it, brother. I love it.
That was distracting. It's not The Exorcist. He was crawling face down.
I love it. I mean, don't worry. We're probably going to see my cat wander across the desk here any second anyway, because he always likes to join me up here. So it's all happening. We can't get a moment of peace. It's all good.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the strength of schedule. So and I think that will, down the track, when we see an Ethan Mitchell who's had 7 or 8 professional fights, he's going to be very well prepared because he's already seen every scenario. Now, the flip side to that, the other component of that is that Ethan Mitchell is now going to be a very difficult guy to match.
Yeah,
I feel he's going to be very difficult. We've now got a 0-2 guy who's shown incredible talent and who's gone split decision now with the featherweight title contender and Taser, and a guy, Alistair Volders, who's moved to 4-0. So as a trainer, when you look up on the Tapology, the Ethan Mitchell that you've been offered, you go, wow, what do I gain from finding this guy other than that experience? Like if you beat him and a guy looks at your Tapology down the track, you beat the 0-2 guy, without watching that fight, you don't know the caliber of the man. But I think they're building a foundation for Ethan Mitchell, and if he can string together a couple of fights, get to 2-2, you start getting some big ones, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point too, because I think it was Eternal 91. Obviously, the next night we had Jordan Gamble, who came in as an 0-2 fighter. I'm not necessarily comparing those two guys or their skill sets or anything. It's nothing to do with it, but just in terms of people or fighters that start their career 0-2, it's not Jack Della Maddalena is the other guy that comes to mind. Like, Ethan Mitchell just might be the best 0-2 guy in Australasia right now. Like, if we have to be, like, surely with his skill set, like, and again, like that strength of schedule you talked about and having these 2 fights, like there can't be too many more, assuming that we can get him another matchup, like as soon as possible. Like, he's probably already fought the 2 hardest fights that you could possibly sort of fight at this sort of point in his career. You can't see him sort of going too much further in a career without picking up a bunch of wins because he's such a talented kid, such a talented striker. There's so many good things for both these guys, mind you, but for Ethan Mitchell, especially training out of Team Compton and everything they're putting together there. And we've seen the way that Team Compton has leveled up every aspect of their fighters' games, whether it's a guy like Don Marfan, whose striking's come so far, but like what an impressive grappler Don Marfan is, and that sort of might be the path that we see Ethan Mitchell take. But again, can't take away anything from Alistair Volders because ultimately the win went to him. Moves to 4-0 in his career. The first time as a pro that he's seen a decision because he's coming off 3 finishes, 1 submission and 2 knockouts to start his career. So this, in turn, not just for Ethan, but this was the toughest fight, certainly for Alistair Volders. Training out of Absolute MMA, of course, the main training partner these days of Jack Jenkins, and you can see a little bit of that rubbing off on him. And this is a kid, too, that's he's got a little bit of shine about him as well outside of the cage. Like, he's only a young boy, but very charismatic, very confident in himself. You see that inside the cage as well as outside the cage. So looking forward to seeing Alistair Volders back again. But he's got a bright future too.
Alistair Volders isn't getting the shine he deserves. And I felt that coming in.
Exactly. Yeah, coming into the fight as well. Like, flew weirdly under the radar, this fight in general, before Alistair Volders too, yeah.
Yeah, which surprises me. Like, you look at the guys who Alistair Volders has been beating, like, this is a serious guy, man. He should be at the top of the conversation, and I think he is moving forward. He is just a workhorse. I know he's a workhorse in the gym, and I think he's just outworking people, to be honest, and progressing so hard and fast. This, I don't feel, was Alistair Volders' best performance either. He's got a lot more to show. I think the offbeat rhythm, the offbeat timing, the expensive way that Mitchell was fighting probably took Volders to take a more economical approach, where he is a finisher. Like, he likes to go forward and finish fights. There was some opportunities too as well. The way that Mitchell was dipping right over the front of his lead knee and his base, there was a knee there for days. And talking to Andy Colgrave after, they were screaming for it. They wanted that knee. I'd like to see Volders go more to his clinch work in the cage as well, like dirty boxing, knees. I know that he does that incredibly well, and I know coming out of that system, that's going to be a big asset for him moving forward. Really big things for Alistair Volders in a featherweight division that has a lot of stars at the top. I think Alistair belongs at the top of that conversation. Talking to Simon Carson after the fights too, on my way back to the hotel room, he's got massive raps on him, and probably shared my sentiment that Volders isn't getting enough shine. But I'm sure that the Absolute team, Simon and Alistair Volders, will be watching Taser Malone and Seb Saleh very closely, because they have to be on the fringe of that conversation, Luke.
Why do you think it is that he might not be sort of getting that immediate shine, at least up until this point? Is that maybe, like, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, is that potentially because, like, he's a Victorian boy, it's sort of a bit out of the way of a lot of those guys? Like, we had, like, must have been 100, 200 plus, like, obviously I'm exaggerating, they're fighters for CMBT and the gyms and everything up there. So it's kind of like a boy coming in from the Victoria scene, not necessarily maybe as well known kind of up in those parts. Like, do you think that's potentially sort of got a lot to do with it?
You're spot on. It has to be at, like, Victoria, down here. Me and you both Victorian lads, mate.
Shout out, baby.
Down here, no one really knows us until we walk in to Queensland, kick open the saloon doors, knock a couple glasses off the table, and eat a spicy hot wing. Yes. And that's what Volders has done. That's what Luke Daly has done. That's what Harry Webb has done, although he already carried a name into Eternal. But, guys like Luke Daly on the mic when he first came in, I was singing the guy's praises. Everyone else is like, well, who's this country lad, But there's a lot of talent down here in Victoria, but we have to fight to have our name on. But look at us, mate. Hey,
Just go.
look how good we look.
Look how
at
good
the moment, Luke.
That's it, baby. We're holding it up high for everyone in Victoria here. We're leading the dance for these young boys coming through, like, you in the commentary booth, me on the podcast here and that sort of thing. So, obviously, I just kid. These boys are doing incredible things. All the boys you just mentioned there, I'm glad that you did. Harry Webb, Luke Daly, now Alistair Volders coming through from Absolute MMA doing his thing. I mean, it must be said that he was originally a Victorian boy, did move up to Queensland, and then brought himself all the way back down to Victoria in a pretty big MMA decision for himself to find himself a really good gym. And has become a focal point of that gym, fighting now closely with our former featherweight champion in Jack Jenkins. So I like that you mentioned there that this wasn't necessarily his best performance. You could tell a lot in that fight. There's still some things that you can see he's mentally putting together. And look, a lot of it might seem like he's poised and everything, but I think there's still that the ceiling's high for him in terms of what he could potentially be, even with things like just improving like the speed aspect of his game and kind of maybe a little bit of unpredictability mixed in there with clearly the good technical side that he already has as part of his game. If he adds a couple more of those tools to his belt, he's going to be a massive problem. But again, like we said, a big shout out to Ethan Mitchell as well, because he's an 0-2 fighter on paper, but he's not an 0-2 fighter in terms of his skill set. And I mean, he was close to getting himself the win in that first round too, because he definitely took that first round, split open Alistair Volders in the first round with a big knockdown there too. So, but it just points to more credit earned from Alistair Volders that he's still coming at the win. So hats off to both of those boys for putting an absolute show in the featherweight division. We got to see Odin Muscat versus Joseph Larcinese in the co-main event. Now, this one was not originally meant to be the co-main event. Obviously, we lost the co-main with was it the Jackson Weir White fight, and then was it the Campbell Science fight? I think is what we lost. Jackson Weir White.
Sam Miles.
Sam Miles. My apologies. So I'm getting the two mixed up there. But
another Victorian lad.
Another Victorian lad. Former golfer, crossover to MMA. Sam Miles. Hopefully, we get to see him back in the cage at some point, or see him in the cage for Eternal MMA. But listen, Odin Muscat for this one. A lot of this was built up around him because of everything that he's shown already so early in his career, especially in the amateurs, but coming in and winning the way he did in the first round of his first professional fight. But going back to his amateurs and showing that he can knock people out with both hands, the left and the right, for a young kid in the flyweight division, the tools that he's showing off in terms of his poise, his speed, his elusiveness, his footwork, like he's got absolutely everything. And it kind of felt like with the pull out of the co-main event that this was just kind of the stars aligning for Odin Muscat to get himself into a co-main event slot, and being able to kind of take that next leap and really put it on in front of sort of his hometown. And Joseph Larcinese just blew that out of the water in terms of the fairy tale there for Odin Muscat. This was a tale of the bull and the matador in this fight, man. And you'll talk about this better than me, but Odin Muscat for 2.5 rounds just looked absolutely unbeatable, and Joseph Larcinese just showed that you can't teach ticker, man. Like that, this was an absolute heart win to be able to grind it out, to wear the damage on his face, to keep coming forward, to keep putting up with the jab of Odin Muscat, to have to keep following around the cage with Odin constantly switching stances, and just like never give up on himself, keep listening to his corner, keep grinding it out. Ultimately gets the win by submission at the end. And mind you, even in the last minute, I mean, he took him down, and that wasn't the end. Like Odin still got back to the feet. I think, and I'll get you to talk about this, but one thing I did notice watching back was the moment that Odin decided to clinch with him and sort of take him back, ultimately is what led to it being returned to the floor, because Larcinese did reverse sort of that position, getting to the floor, and ultimately finished with a sub win. But listen, Joe Larcinese, big sexy. I think one of the comebacks of the year, one of the comebacks of all time, man. Just an absolute gut-grinding, just heart-stopping comeback there from Joe Larcinese. Hats off to him against a big-time prospect like Odin Muscat.
Yeah, let me talk about this. First, I want to talk about Muscat, and then I'd like to talk about Larcinese.
Go ahead, my man.
Muscat looked like a world beater.
Didn't he?
He didn't look like a domestic MMA future champion. He looked like a guy that could get into the UFC and get straight in the top with these guys.
Yep.
The eyes that he had in that fight, and he's got intense eyes anyway. It was soft vision. I was watching, I was like zoned in with him, and he wasn't looking at Larcinese. He was looking at Larcinese and the space around him. That soft vision, like when you do like a Magic Eye book, if you're old enough to remember those. He's looking at everything at once.
Yep.
And he couldn't miss. His output, like his conversion rate for his strikes, the success rate must have been incredibly high. I didn't see him waste a shot. His timing was impeccable. He was scoring on the first phase, making Larcinese miss, and then hitting him on the second phase. When Larcinese threw big, he would roll under punches like a Lomachenko, like a high-level boxer. And these guys are fighting in 4-ounce gloves at flyweight. Like, that's insane. Also, just on a side note, if he had won that fight, Odin Muscat, he would have had to cover himself in Vaseline to get out of that venue, because there was a horde of adoring females screaming the whole way through. That guy brings in a crowd.
Yeah, I can see that.
Jeepers. Yeah. But I was so impressed. Odin Muscat is such a bright prospect for MMA in this country. There's no doubt in my mind, I bet my bottom dollar that he will be in the UFC within the next 5 years and being incredibly successful there. He didn't lose that fight. The dog in Larcinese is what came back and snatched that from the jaws of defeat. I have always had a spot in my heart for an underdog. When I watch a moment in any kind of sport where an underdog comes through against the odds and perseveres through adversity, I get emotional. I'm like the guy that cries at the end of a movie. I may or may not have had a little tear roll down my face when Larcinese got that. I love that kid. He's such a me and you, Luke, we went down and spoke to him before the show, and in the changing rooms, and he's just such a genuine, nice, humble person. He doesn't really deserve that mantle, Big Sexy. It's kind of like might be his show name, but he deserves something grander, because that's not really him at all when you get to talk to him. And there's something going on at Igor's MMA. I get the sense that ego and individualism and selfishness have no place in that gym. I watch the way that Igor embraces everybody who's part of his team. He doesn't go out seeking the limelight, but he's doing incredible things. And I think Larcinese was a reflection of that on the weekend. He got bashed the first 2 rounds. Like, he didn't have a dog in that fight. The only dog that he had was inside of him, and he fought right through to the last second. The way you talk about the speaking of dogs, I locked my dog in my room, and it's like literally trying to chew through my door right now.
Oh God,
I may have to address it at some stage. The way that he jumped on that submission, that wasn't a technical setup. He literally jumped at the neck, snatched it, and it was so tight because he wanted it so much that he got the finish. That was incredible finish. That was my favorite finish by far for the whole year, because of what it meant in that moment. Insane. I sent him a message after the fight, and I very rarely will do that to a fighter. It was just such an awesome way to wrap up an amazing year of action at Eternal MMA.
And I just want to say there too, we talk a lot about Odin Muscat and what a prospect he is, and do not get it confused. Like, Odin Muscat is part of this new breed of flyweights that are coming through the ranks now, with just this crazy, insane power in their hands that we didn't used to see a lot of from the flyweight division. I think we talked about this in the last podcast that we did. The flyweight division in the UFC was almost sort of defunct or was almost disbanded because it was just kind of perceived as this division that was just, just technical fighting with not a lot of knockouts, and, people in sort of the Western world weren't as impressed by this. But we're seeing so many more knockouts coming through this division. Odin Muscat, in terms of Australian fighters, is leading the charge for that, to be sort of that next guy in the UFC. But again, take nothing away from Larcinese, because, he came into this fight as a 2-0 fighter with 2 submission wins on his record. He's a perfect 3 for 3 now for submission wins. So, he's making a massive name for himself in his own right. And putting it perfectly, having that dog in him to keep going. You talk about the eyes of Odin Muscat, and I see exactly what you mean, because I saw that within him too. He was just sort of free and seeing everything in that fight. Different story for Larcinese. His eyes were firmly fixed on his opponent, knowing that he's just got to grind at this win. And he's like, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. I'm going to get this done. He's wearing the pain on his face. And just to be able to get that win in the end there, like crazy. You just don't see that at this moment, especially to get a submission win there too. And this is where I kind of I feel for Odin in this moment as well, because it's not like he got caught with a knockout blow that just puts his lights out. Like, how heartbreaking for him that he goes through 2.5 rounds, put in an absolute clinic, and having that choke around his neck in the last 20 seconds, and just knowing that I have to let this fight slip away from me in that moment. And that happened right next to me, and to see the disappointment in his face, again, that just speaks to the highs and lows of this game. Clinching the win from the jaws of defeat from Larcinese, and Odin Muscat, who was obviously believing that he was on his way to another big time win to start his career 2-0. Has to go back and lick his wounds and reset, and no doubt he will. But look, there was no losers out of this fight. Everyone won. The crowd won. You won cage side in the commentary booth. Larcinese gets to snatch the victory from the jaws of defeat and go to 3-0 in his record. And Odin Muscat, while he walks away with an L in his record, it's only his first one, but looked incredible. And everything you said in terms of your analysis of his performance, there's big things coming from this kid. I'm sure his team's telling him that. And I hope Odin knows that, because he still seems like he's a kid that's he's still learning about himself, and he's still finding out who he is, and he's still finding his feet in the gym and kind of crossing over at the moment to, is this the career I want to take? And I didn't get to put up the podcast that I last had with him because his last fight fell through, but he just seemed like he was transitioning, where he's like, yeah, I think this could be my career and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking yes, this is your fucking career. Oh my God, yes. Please, keep at this. And no doubt he will. So, cannot wait to see both of those boys back. Just a couple of absolute dogs we got in the flyweight division. That set us up nicely for the return, speaking of CMBT, Brenton Mumford coming back in his return fight after 3 years, happily retired, coaching up that next generation of boys at CMBT, coming in against David Martinez, also obviously coming up to welterweight after having his issues, making weight down in the lightweight division. Brenton Mumford not wanting to cut the weight down to lightweight anymore. And I mean, he looked big as a welterweight, so I certainly don't blame him for that. These guys that obviously already fought before, with David Martinez getting the win in that previous fight way back when. This was a fun build up to the fight. It was great talking to Brenton and just getting his insight coming to this fight about feeling like he can finally fight free, because he spent a lot of his career kind of worrying about the results, worrying about what's next. He made mention that, through a lot of his career, it's just such a blur because he wasn't taking the time to sort of smell the roses and enjoy it for what it is. Like you said, there's not 99.9% of people will never do this. And I think that was a regret for Brenton through his career, because he spent so much time just worrying about training, worrying about grinding, worrying about what a loss means. And be able to come back at 37 years of age and just enjoy it. And even in the loss, seeing the smile on his face, because he just got to fight free in this one, just enjoy it finally. And hopefully that continues, because I believe he still wants to keep doing this. So hopefully he fights with that freedom, because while the fight didn't last very long, and hats off to David Martinez for doing what David Martinez does, but Brenton looked good in those early parts, man, with his striking, just looked like kind of a vintage Brenton Mumford, but ultimately, it looked like vintage David Martinez as well, with his grappling, gets it to the ground, gets a submission in the first round. Incredible on the mic afterwards, mind you, as well. Some fantastic moments from Brenton Mumford, calling out the company for inside bullying for his weight loss misses and that sort of thing. So hats off to both of those boys. Welcome back, Brenton Mumford. Unfortunately, you didn't get the win, but great to see you fighting free. And again, hats off to David Martinez, making his welterweight debut and continuing his good run of form there with a big-time win in the main event for Eternal 90.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up workplace bullying at Eternal MMA, because I feel like I've got a couple of things to say about it to the HR department. Robin O'Neill just made my weekend an absolute misery at any given opportunity. Being called a boomer, who you are. I'll see you in Sydney, and it's a great place to work. How's been Martinez's fat ass was just poking at us through the cage right in front of the commentary booth, and as he was trying to choke Mumford out, he was talking to the commentary booth going, "Stop making jokes about my weight."
Is that what was happening? Is that what he was doing mid-fight? Because I'm over the other side, so I'm not hearing any of this. But...
Yeah. That guy's a maniac. He often will talk. He often will talk to people cage side. But I think in all seriousness, I think what that points to, and you alluded to it, is that both gentlemen are such veterans and they were having fun. They're having a fist fight, which is pretty crazy at 77.7 kg. So there's a lot of risk involved. But shut up, dog, or I'll come in there and I'll armbar you, you little squishy face prick.
Yes.
The Mumford, when he came out, it was just so nice for me. I'm a friend of Brenton Mumford's. I love that guy. It was just so nice to see him fight free and come out and enjoy it and to be loving the sport again. I understand what it is to fall out of love with things and then refine that and and then get back to training, especially as an older guy. So it was nice to see that, and he looked so dangerous at welterweight. I know he used to flog the horse to make lightweight. He came out looking like he was going to finish Mumford in the first round. No, he wasn't going to finish himself. He was going to finish Martinez in the first round, and he looked pretty. It looked like it could have happened, and I thought it might with the increase in power that he possessed. He just fell in love with chasing the finish a little bit harder when he reached for the clinch to give him the old Yasuki Sato treatment, I believe.
Yeah.
Martinez found him with a left hook. Now, the thing with Martinez is his striking has improved a lot since he fought Brenton Mumford. It has. He used to look like a rock'em sock'em. It wasn't pretty. It was unorthodox. It was heavy at times, but it was pretty much centered around a jab that would allow him to jab into the clinch and take guys down. Now he can punch on the counter, and that left hook was good, great placement, especially under fire. So, showing some excellent wrinkles to his striking was Martinez. When it hit the ground, this is something I loved from Mumford. He used to rush these positions quite a lot and would often end up giving up his back by making a poor decision. His initial defenses, and there's stages to a submission attempt. His initial defenses were excellent right through that first little component. It was a small mistake and probably spoke to me about time spent out of the cage over a long period that led to a timing issue where he gave up that head and arm triangle. It's not a technical issue. It was a timing issue. And Martinez at welterweight has a much bigger squeeze. I noticed that was a very tight squeeze for the head and arm.
Yep.
The shoulder was in the perfect position. The way that Martinez was turning his head into his own bicep to get extra pressure. And I could see Martinez's back, and I watched the second that he invested in that squeeze through his lats and through controlling Brenton with his legs. And he only invested in the squeeze for maybe 2 seconds, and it was so tight that Mumford had to tap. So Martinez now repels into a title contention conversation, and will be keeping a close eye on Costello and Sydney, that's for sure.
It's interesting you mentioned that too, because from memory, he didn't really give much indication one way or another, outside of saying that I know he mentioned this in the in some of his interviews previous to the fight, or prior to the fight, pardon me, that he's got a nutritionist now, so he didn't completely say one way or another whether he wants to stay at welterweight. Didn't say that he's going back down to lightweight from my memory or anything, but it seems like, I don't know, it seems like he's still flirting with the idea now he's got a nutritionist that maybe he wants to go back down to lightweight. I could be not recollecting anything that he said specifically there, but for your money, obviously you're saying that he looked incredible in this fight. He had that big squeeze at welterweight. I think he should be staying at welterweight because he fought a Brenton Mumford, who was, I know he used to be a lightweight too, but he was the bigger fighter and looked big at welterweight too, so he can clearly handle himself with this weight class. I definitely like to see David stay at welterweight and try to make a run. It's not only the fact that he was missing weight at lightweight. This is like it's like turning a new page. This is fresh matchups. He's on a 3-fight win streak now. I know this is his first one, obviously, at welterweight, but it's the first time he's been on a 3-fight win streak since 2019. Why not keep that momentum? Why not stay at the welterweight division and see what you can do here?
What did George W. Bush say? You fool me twice, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, you'll never fool me. You'll never fool me again.
Now, I believe that was exactly what
I have literally zero interest in seeing Martinez try and come back to lightweight. That is
same.
If that happens, I'm gonna pack up my things and I'm gonna go be a taekwondo commentator or another make believe sport. I've got no interest in that. He's had his chances. I'm happy to say my piece. You can't keep leaving guys at the altar like Harry Webb on one of the biggest weekends in the sport, 100%. Just time and time again. He belongs at welterweight. He is a welterweight. Should have had a nutritionalist 6 years ago, buddy. Apply your trade there. He can have some really good success at welterweight. If he gets the nod down the track, gets a signed envelope with UFC written on the front of it, then he can try something else. But as far as them Eternal MMA fans, don't put us through that again, son.
No, I 100% agree. It's just exciting to see him have something different to kind of go for now again, like on a nice little win streak that he's on. In an interesting position in his career because he doesn't sort of talk too much about what he potentially sort of wants for the future. He just lets his fighting do the talking. And David Martinez, regardless of the wins, losses, regardless of any of his weight misses and everything, he's a high level fighter. He's a terrific human being. He's a funny guy. Like he's an accidentally funny guy. Like, and I touched on, the post-fight interview that he gave in the cage as well. Something to the fact of like, I'm an Eternal exclusively signed athlete, working with Eternal people. This is a partnership. All the jokes about my weight missing is just workplace bullying. And to see Cam like in the corner there, just have a massive laugh at that as well. I thought it was just a terrific moment. But we always get great Martinez moments after his fights, whether that's him being just a genuine bloke, giving the shout outs, always giving the props, always sorry for his weight misses, but just he's funny. He's just got so many cool things. Like he's like a big kid at heart, but he's a big kid at welterweight now too. So he needs to use that nutritionist to, not cut back down to lightweight, but to maybe put on a little bit of good size for welterweight and make a good run there. So yes, I'm glad that you brought up the fight coming up, Lockie Stitt versus Stephen Costello, if indeed that goes ahead. In Sydney in February. Who knows if David Martinez can insert himself into the conversation there somewhere, whether he be next, whether he gets to insert himself if one of those fighters doesn't show up. We'll certainly see. But we've got a new player in the welterweight division in David Martinez, capping off an absolutely incredible Eternal 90 night on the eve of Eternal 91. Incredible event this was, like I said at the start of the piece, getting to be there cage side and seeing everything go down. And just seeing how well run everything is, from everything that happens inside and outside the cage, having the pleasure of seeing everything that goes on from just all the moving parts. You mentioned people there before, like Robin O'Neill, just what a chip off the block of Cam O'Neill she is, and seeing her, participating in running this show. Guys cage side doing their thing, that the media boys like Win and Sohail, like just seeing how on it they are with everything. With their cameras, just getting all the bits and pieces they needed to do, just everything that's going on with all these moving parts. Like it's the first time I've had the pleasure of seeing this from that side. It's my third Eternal event I've been to. I've been, kind of not cage side, but I've sort of been in the front row and kind of seen a little bit of how everything goes on, but be able to see everything from behind the scenes. Meeting guys like you, Matt, obviously for the first time, being able to see Big T, meeting him for the second time and being able to meet so many incredibly good people, and just seeing how much goes into making Eternal MMA what it is. And that's the best organization that we have here in Australia. That's not my bias. Obviously, I work for Eternal. Obviously, I do my thing for Eternal. But this is just absolutely A1 here in Australia, from top to bottom. The fights that we had on both nights for Eternal 90 that we're talking about right now, just everything is just so high level. There's nothing else like it. And for anyone that hasn't been to an Eternal MMA event, and this isn't a plug or anything like that, you've got to get yourself to an Eternal MMA event. We've got the Sydney card obviously coming up. That got announced at some point during the show. We've got a few things announced, mind you, for this one. We've got Seb Salaya, featherweight champion, going up against a man that we mentioned before, Taser Malone, assuming that potentially will be the main event. Obviously, there'll still be fights to be added to that. But what an intriguing main event that is for the featherweight title. The karate fighter, Seb Salaya, going up against the machine, Taser Malone, and his relentless grappling. This is a fascinating fight just for the stylistic matchup. I'm going to mention a couple of the other things that we had coming up too, but I'm keen just to get your kind of immediate thoughts, knowing these fighters just specifically for this fight. when you first heard about this being put together, can you tell me like what your thoughts sort of first were, and how much you're looking forward to this matchup? Because I'm pumped for this one, man. This is cool.
It's very interesting, isn't it? This fight. The more I consider it, the more I like it. Yeah. It's really maturing on me and its complexity, and the storylines involved. Seb Saleh at home.
Yep.
Of course, he's originally from Perth, but finally the freestyle team get a home match. And Saleh is, for me, he is the most well-polished striker in Eternal. Not the most devastating, but the most considered, the most risk-averse, the trickiest. He's got the best implementation of a striking system that I see. He's incredibly hard to beat on the feet. In fact, I don't see anyone in Australia beating Seb Saleh on the feet. I think he's just too good. Of course, everyone always has a puncher's chance. You've spoken about how our sport is the most fickle of sports, the highest highs, the highest lows. We have 4 ounces of leather strapped to our fist, which isn't a lot to separate you from your consciousness. He's also incredibly well developed against the cage. He's excellent hand fighting, inside fighting. He's patient. He's well matured there. He is truly the best we have at featherweight and a proper champion. It's going to take a lot for Taser to dethrone the king, especially in his hometown. Taser is a guy that we've seen grow from a boy into a man within the halls of the Southport Sharks. He essentially has a sleeping bag and a pillow rolled up underneath the Eternal MMA cage, and he's the hometown lad. He is now known as the Machine, formerly as Bad to the Bone, but the Machine suits him. And he's a machine that continues to be developed and improved. Every time we see him, whether he's the underdog or the favorite, he just exceeds expectations, and he doesn't stop coming like a machine. Taser over 5 rounds is what really intrigues me, because Taser's style is built around weaponizing his cardio. He's got a nuclear fission engine, this kid, and he won't stop coming. I'm interested to see Taser Malone versus Seb Saleh late in the 3rd and through the 4th and through the 5th. Taser is the underdog coming into this, there's no doubt, but I think he would like it like that, Luke.
Yeah, look, it's, you just mentioned there about what Taser Malone brings to the table. Not comparing these guys certainly skill-wise at this stage in their career, but he's kind of got a little bit of that Merab Dvalishvili about him in terms of just that relentless pressure and his takedowns and everything. It's just such like a clash of styles in this main event. And I can't wait to see how many more fights get added to this one in Sydney on the eve of UFC. Philpott versus Maharaj in the bantamweight division there. Like, what an absolute fight of a couple of guys, a couple of OG boys for the Eternal scene, for the Australian MMA scene there. That's going to be cool to see that. We've got Etchell versus Parker there too in the flyweight division. Like, that's just going to be an incredible fight. We missed, obviously, Parker in this last card that we had here, so to see him coming up against Sean Etchell, that's going to be a cracker of a fight, no doubt as well. One that I'm incredibly excited to see on that card too. Emil Jerry's versus Christian Lapham, the return of Christian Lapham, one of the hype prospects that we got out of CMBT. Emil Jerry's, man, as well, just for my part, like incredibly underrated. I think he's only just 2-1 at this point in his career. I could be getting that wrong, but he's a dangerous striker, and that's going to be a big test for Christian Lapham. Not that he didn't have a big test against the Honey Badger in his last fight, but that is one to look forward to as well. And Panoris versus Nubetsu in the featherweight division, a couple of those fights that we've got announced so far as well. We did get some fights announced for Eternal 93, which is going to be when we're heading back to Perth in February 22nd. Wes Kappa, the returning Wes Kappa against Raymark Quintana. Obviously, we saw Raymark Quintana fight very recently, didn't get the win, but he's got a good dance partner to strike against in Wes Kappa. This one's certainly staying on the feet an absolutely striking delight there. Obviously, there's a lot more fights to be added to that card so far, but that's going to be a catch weight bout. Wes Kappa at 74 kilos versus Raymark Quintana. Holy smokes, that's going to be incredible to see. Toby Meach versus Sam Hibbert, another one that's been added to that card. Julian Justiniano versus Daniel Mercurio as well in the bantamweight division. Last but not least, for Eternal 94, just the one fight announced so far. But the returning flyweight champion, the returning former flyweight champion Tim Moore versus Rod Costa so far announced for Eternal 94 in a catchweight bout of 63 kilos. That was just one of multiple announcements that got announced for our upcoming cards for next year, because we've just capped off an absolutely incredible 2024. The fights we've got so far already announced for 2025 have got us excited. So get your tickets at eternalmma.com. There's going to be more added to these cards, obviously, in the coming weeks and months. But we've been set up so well for 2025, man. Lots to look forward to.
Yeah, big time. 2024 was a crazy year, man. Like it was a crazy year for fights. That so many shifting storylines, so many champions crowned. People stepped out. People stepped up to the UFC. I reckon it was Eternal's biggest year, its biggest and greatest chapter by far. And you touched on the team and the level of production. There's truly nothing that can compare to what Eternal has going on right now, and that from the back end to the front, the back end names that no one would be aware of, like Quinn and Sahal, who are responsible almost single-handedly for the way that Eternal looks. The graphics that come out that just wow me every time. Yep. The video production, right to the front of house. Georgia and Lily, who are leading the charge with the interviews. I see how much work goes into the preparation there, and they're true professionals and absolutely killing it. And I look forward to working alongside that whole team moving forward in 2025. The matchmaking has been insane this year, so top notch, so top tier. The in-house production, the live venue, everything. There's nowhere else you'd rather be. Eternal MMA coming into 2025, especially starting with that incredible Sydney card on the eve of the UFC, is going to be a special year, Luke. I can't wait.
And don't forget to give yourself a pat on the back there too, to include yourself in that list of the people that make it go around, man, because you and MCT have formed an absolutely formidable partnership in that commentary booth, just playing so well for each other. I absolutely, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, love watching and learning from you guys and everything you do. Just two of the best in the game. Just fantastic insight. I love when Ben Vickers gets thrown into the mix there too. So for you guys doing your thing there at Cage Side, absolutely love it. And thank you very much for your contributions too, because I'm learning so much from everyone. It's been fantastic. So to share your sentiments, what a massive 2024 it was. Rolling into 2025, I agree with you that this has been an absolute banner year for Eternal MMA. Definitely their biggest year. New champions, everything from facilitating a lot of these like Japanese and Asian fighters coming over here to fight our guys. Like, it's truly growing outside of just Australia. It's Australasia, but it's also, getting into these regions and having these guys coming over and fight our boys over here. The sport is growing, but the scene is growing here, and Eternal MMA is definitely at the forefront of that. So we wrap up here for this breakdown of Eternal 90. We're going to come back and do it all again for Eternal 91, because if you thought Eternal 90 was something special, Eternal 91 was that and then some. So can't wait to do it all again with your brother. We'll break for a few short hours. We'll come back with a new video. I'm going to throw a new t-shirt on so it makes it look like I'm not doing this on the same day. But this is a pleasure doing this with you, man. Love meeting you on the weekend. Thank you for being so accommodating. Felt like I've known you for 100 years. And I've loved doing what we've done so far with these breakdowns, these look-aheads. Long may it continue, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, brother. I'm off to jiu-jitsu now. Feels like I've been alive for 100 years. Of course, I'm a boomer at the end of the day, so it would be known. So I'll probably have a little nap, and I'll see you this afternoon.
See you then, man.